Hello and welcome from Pakistan. I'm Quatrina. All eyes are now on the Strait of Hormuz. That seems to be the main sticking point given the situation between Iran and the United States. I say situation because it seems to be somewhere in the middle of an impasse, a stalemate, maybe even a deadlock. Who's to tell? And one of the problems that we always have is that much of the discussions seem to be happening on social media, despite the fact that the United States had decided that they were not going to conduct diplomacy anymore on social media. But President Trump went ahead once again today and announced, and I'm going to read this to you. Iran has just informed us that they are in a state of collapse. They want us to open the Hormuz Strait as soon as possible as they try to figure out their leadership situation, which I believe they will be able to do, etc., etc. And this kind of statement doesn't really help. I know that everybody is going to say that he's catering to his domestic audience. But once again, I reiterate that his Truth Social posts are seen around the world. And it is considered, or at least people look at it as some kind of policy. Well, let's read between the lines. Iran is certainly not calling the United States directly. We know that for a fact. And in fact, as we discussed in my previous video, Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi embarked on a three-nation tour. And first he came to Pakistan, then he went to Oman, then he came back to Pakistan, and then he flew to St. Petersburg to meet Russian President Vladimir Putin. And that meeting was extremely interesting. We don't have a lot of details about it. We do know that it was pretty open and frank. And normally the president of a country does not meet the foreign minister of a country. It's usually held at the same level. Of course, the Russian foreign minister was present, as were other Russian important leaders from Russia, but President Putin himself greeted the Iranian foreign minister. It looked very warm, very friendly. They shook hands. And what we do have is a statement from the Iranian foreign minister. And I won't vouch for it word for word because it was a statement in Persian, which was then translated. So I'm going to share that with that caveat that this is translated. And Mr. Araghchi said, developments have occurred in the negotiations. And he said that this was in pursuit of checking with Pakistan, with Oman, and with Russia, given the what he called latest situation, bringing them all up to date on that. And then he said, developments have occurred in the negotiations. The American approaches caused the previous round of talks, and now he's referring to the Islamabad talks that were held in Pakistan. The previous round of talks, despite the progress that had been made, were not able to reach its objectives. The excessive demands they made, referring to the United States, and the incorrect approaches they adopted. It was necessary for us to have consultations with our friends in Pakistan to examine the latest situation. So now at least we have some kind of formal word from the Iranian foreign minister about what potentially went wrong. Basically what we had been hearing on the grapevine as well, which was that the Americans weren't giving anything. And we have talked about this over and over again, that there has to be give and take in negotiations. You can't just present demands and expect all of them to be accepted by the other side. And Iran is very particular about that. They want to make sure that whatever deal, that the agreement that they do reach with the United States would protect some of their interests at least. Are they willing to compromise? Perhaps. I don't want to convey in some way that I am privy to the thought process either in the United States or Iran. But we do read the posts that come out from different leaders of Iran as well as from the United States. Now, one of the very important things to also keep in mind over here is that not only has the United States not given any good faith agreement, measures, any allowances whatsoever, they've actually ramped up their rhetoric. Now, for example, Iran announced that they were opening 6 of their airports to international travel, not going all over the world, just going to a few destinations, including Muscat and Istanbul. But the United States Treasury Secretary, Scott Bessent, reacted pretty bad to that. And let me see if I can pull up his tweet here. So U.S. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent, I don't know if he's playing good cop, bad cop, or what's going on over here, but then when Iran announced that they were opening the 6 airports, this is the tweet that he sent out, which said, doing business with sanctioned Iranian airlines risks exposure to U.S. sanctions. Foreign governments should take all actions necessary to ensure that companies in their jurisdiction do not provide services to those aircraft, including the provision of jet fuel, catering, landing fees, or maintenance. Under Epic Fury, that's what they call their operation, the U.S. Treasury will impose maximum pressure on Iran and will not hesitate to act against any third parties that facilitate or conduct business with Iranian entities. Okay. And then right after that, he tweets a very offensive, I thought, comment. While the surviving IRGC leaders are trapped like drowning rats in a sewage pipe, Iran's creaking oil industry is starting to shut production thanks to the U.S. blockade. Well, is this conducive to bringing Iran to the talking table, to negotiate, to talk to them? Iran, the United States still seems to have not understood Iran. Iran is very clearly saying, let's go back to Feb 27, a day before the war. Strait of Hormuz was open. We can talk about it. We can reopen the Strait of Hormuz. The United States needs to lift its blockade, and we can defer the thornier issues of nuclear weapons and enrichment of uranium to a later date, because right now, the chokehold on the world's economy is the Strait of Hormuz. And it is blocked not just by Iran, but by the United States as well. Let me reiterate that the United States says that they are imposing a blockade only on Iranian ships and Iranian ports. Okay, fair enough, but that doesn't really make it conducive for other ships that are still trapped to make their way in and out, or for other ships to try and get in, because the United States is still boarding ships that are Iranian flagged, and that continues to be an irritant in the relations. And then, of course, a bombshell today. And the United Arab Emirates, which has predominantly sided with the United States and Israel in this situation, announced that they were withdrawing from OPEC and OPEC Plus. This sent a shockwave through the entire oil industry globally. We don't know exactly what this is going to impact, but it is a major indicator of how forces are being realigned in and around the region. So the Gulf Cooperation Council countries, including Saudi Arabia, United Arab Emirates, Qatar, Bahrain, Kuwait, they all had a meeting today in Jeddah to talk about the whole region, what's going on, because they also need to export their oil. They also need to get supplies into their own countries. And right now, the current situation, which one of the delegates described as, we will not be able to tolerate a frozen situation. So the current, what I said, potential stalemate or impasse is not really acceptable to other people in the region, because they want to get on with business as usual. And extension of this scenario, what we are seeing, is not really helpful for any of the countries in the region, including Pakistan and, may I say, India, because India also is feeling the pain and the pressure. They have one of the largest aviation, domestic and international aviation industries in the world, and they are running short of jet fuel. So all these issues are now going to apply more pressure on the Trump administration to somehow reach some kind of solution to this imbroglio, or whatever we can call it. There's another thing that also flows through the Strait of Hormuz. It's not just oil. It's not just cargo. It is the global internet. Undersea cables which run along the seabed go through the Strait of Hormuz. So for Europe, the Middle East, Pakistan, India, most of South Asia, if something happens to those undersea cables, we are looking at slowdowns of the internet or outages, God knows for how long. It's hardly going to be easy to repair undersea cables in a war zone, or an area at least which is being watched by the entire world and which has warships all around it and potentially Iranian mines in the area. So we're not just talking about a slowdown in terms of the economy, we are talking about a potential slowdown in the digital economy. And these are constraints that have to be taken into account. Now, Iran has set forth another proposal through mediators, which is what they call a working framework. It's not a document, it's not a memorandum of understanding, it's not an accord, it's not proposals. They're saying, let's just focus on the immediate, the Strait of Hormuz, and we can get to the thornier issues later. But if we are going to see remarks that the kind that we just saw from the US Treasury Secretary, Iran is a very proud nation. They are not going to buckle over this. And a number of a number of international leaders have also commented on this, including the United Nations Secretary General, who said that Iran should open up the Strait of Hormuz, free passage, etc., etc. And so, very interestingly, Iran's ambassador to the United Nations made a very strong statement today, again on Twitter. So I like to read the original tweet as much as possible so you get an understanding of the language that is being used, which is really important for us to look at over here. So now here's what the Iranian ambassador had to say. Iran is not a party to the 1982 UN Convention on the Law of the Sea, UNCLOS as we call it. Therefore, it is not bound by the treaty's provisions. And then they go on to explain that since the main coastal state within the territorial sea, the Strait of Hormuz lies, Iran has a legitimate and legal right to take necessary and proportionate measures to address emerging security threats. Now, this is a very interesting angle that Iran has taken up. They're not legally bound to comply with the UNCLOS because they're not signatories. They say we are signatories to the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty, but you don't listen to us on that, and we're not even signatories to UNCLOS. There's an interesting and legal precedent that Iran could also use, which is the 1936 Montreal Convention, which was really put in place for Turkey at the time, allowing Turkey to have control over the Bosphorus and for the Black Sea region. And this convention, 1936, predates UNCLOS, still on the books, and would conceivably allow Iran to invoke it as well, because that allows Turkey to close the Bosphorus in case of war, stop access to belligerent ships. And Iran is very, very well versed in all of these conventions and the details that are there. So it's not going to be easy to pressurize Iran legally because they seem to be on pretty solid footing there. So now it really does depend on negotiating your way out of the Strait of Hormuz crisis, literally. It is a chokehold. It has to be dealt with. And the smartest thing for the world right now would be for this to happen. Iran had earlier presented 10 points that they wanted to talk about. And they have at this point said, okay, we have a workable framework. Let's work on that. Then we can get to other points. But right now, no direct talks. Iran has been fairly clear about that. Foreign Minister Dr. Araghchi has said this repeatedly. There is no trust. Let's do what needs to be done. But what has Iran also done? They have been in touch with Oman. Iran and Oman are the two countries that have coasts along the Strait of Hormuz. And Oman has been non-committal about whatever discussions they had. A good thing, they're keeping things private, and that helps. But Iran has also another very interesting strategy here. They want to keep diplomacy alive. It is important for them to keep diplomacy alive. It is equally important for the United States to keep diplomacy alive. And one of the reasons why I say that is that a return to war would be tremendously counterproductive for all the participants, except perhaps Israel. Israel is still going ahead with its continued expansionist measures in South Lebanon and attacks on other areas of Lebanon. People continue to die every single day in Lebanon, and now even in Gaza, because attacks in Gaza have begun again. This has been a key point that Iran has been presenting constantly, saying that Lebanon has to be included in the ceasefire. Well, it's not. And I think Israel is using this vacuum to continue to attack Hezbollah as much as they can, but the damage to civilian homes and businesses and infrastructure, entire villages have been flattened. And it is absolutely tragic to see that Europe has done absolutely nothing. They could sanction Israel. They could tell Israel to stop, not a peep out of Europe. And that is extremely disturbing. And we are, you know what we are looking at right now? we are looking at the emergence of a new world architecture. What is this architecture going to look like? It is really going to depend on how countries in West Asia maneuver themselves in this current environment. It is lots of different factors coming into play. You have the Gulf Cooperation Council, which at this point seems to have a sort of a split, well, not a sort of a split, a major split, because the United Arab Emirates, which signed the Abraham Accords with Israel and the United States, is simply not willing to go along with the GCC. Now, the GCC is headed by Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia is the heavyweight in the GCC for multiple reasons. And Saudi Arabia seems to be now leaning a little bit closer to Pakistan's proposals for the area. Because one thing that perhaps we don't talk enough about is that Pakistani leaders have not just been mediating the talks, they have been making frantic visits, whether it is Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif or Field Marshal Asim Munir. They have gone to Turkey, they have gone to Saudi Arabia, they have gone to Qatar, they have gone to various regions, various capitals to talk to them as well. So it's not just the United States and Iran at this point. There is diplomacy going on to see what the post-war situation is likely to develop. And this post-colonial architecture is going to be really significant for the region. Iran has now emerged as a power center. I think for a long time, the Gulf countries, Pakistan, various other countries, we have also ignored Iran. Iran was pretty much left to its own devices, stuck under sanctions, and really doing their own thing quietly for the past 47 years. Well, another very strong indication from Pakistan, Pakistan has opened up several land routes. If you don't know, Pakistan and Iran share a very long border. They have opened up several land routes for Iran to conduct transit trade. And there's a small document in Pakistan which is called an SRO. It is sort of a government document that makes changes and announcements about what's happening in terms of things like customs and whatever. They're not taken very openly, but this one was significant, and they are going to allow Iran's containers, which would be land. Again, I have to reinforce this is land. Iran's containers to transit through Pakistan onto other destinations. And this is going to help Iran, it's going to help Pakistan, and it is also another break emerging in this new architecture that is going to be developing. I really think that it's important for us to keep an eye on the fact that not everything in this region is going to happen according to US interest in this region or Israeli interest in this region. The US is too far away. And I think that with the pressure that the Gulf states faced when Iran started attacking American bases in those Gulf states, that they also woke up to the realization that their security and integrity perhaps would be better served close at home. And so we don't know how this is going to develop, but the signs of a new framework developing are becoming increasingly clear. And it is going to be really important for the United States to understand that it cannot impose its demands on Iran anymore, because Iran's allies are equally strong at this point, and for a change, standing up for Iran publicly. That's all we have for you for this edition of Quatrina on News. Hope you enjoy this. As soon as we have more information to share, more discussions, more thought-provoking ideas, we will be right back. But for now, I leave you with this one single thought. Victims do not get leverage. Look at Gaza. Look at other countries that have been victims of hegemonistic designs of larger states. Iran stood up and is now being counted as a player. Iran said no to the pressures that were being exerted. So Iran is now a player. Victims never are. That's a sad thought for you to think about. For now, it's Quatrina from Karachi. Over to you.